If it feels like homes are disappearing, but prices still aren't dropping, you're not crazy. Something unusual is happening in the housing market, and almost nobody is explaining it correctly. Instead of lowering home prices to attract buyers, more sellers across the country are simply pulling their homes off the market. Now, it's still not a housing market crash. Rather, it's a behavioral shift. And it's a shift in behavior that isn't necessarily a bad one because really sellers aren't panicking. They're just pausing. It's not just a trend that's isolated to the major cities or certain areas of the country. It's been happening all over the nation, including here in South Dakota and our neighboring states like Iowa and Nebraska. In some metros, delistings are up over 40% compared to last year. And recent stats show that since delistings has been a trackable statistic, 2025 had the highest amount of delistings ever on record. Now, along with that, roughly 1 in 7 deals are falling apart before closing. Scientifically speaking, this year has been a little weird. To the outside eye, the Midwest housing market looks tight, but that appearance is often due to the homes that are being withdrawn from the market, not sold, or competitively priced. So why are listings getting pulled? Well, let's start with the pricing expectations versus the buyer's reality. Many sellers are still pricing their homes based on the 2021-2022 boom years for home values and expecting bidding wars that no longer exist. Meanwhile, buyers are facing a legitimately different reality of affordability today than they were in the earlier 2020s. With the culmination of higher interest rates, higher insurance premiums, and higher property taxes, monthly payments are often $600 to $800 higher than they were just 3 years ago for the same house. So when the buyer's current offers aren't matching up to the seller's older expectations, sellers are choosing not to slash prices. They're opting to stay put. In other words, they'd much rather wait things out than become the low comparable sale in their neighborhood. And this is the first sign of what I mentioned up front. Most homes aren't disappearing because they're selling so quickly. They're disappearing because sellers would rather hit pause than price for today's market. Okay, so one thing I need to make clear before going any further. Like anything in our beautiful lives, it's usually never just one thing or event that causes a change or a reaction. I bring that up to say that the spike in homes being delisted is definitely not the only reason for some of the discouraging statistics we're seeing and experiencing in our housing markets. Something that is also factored into the stagnation is on the buyer's side of things. There's an increase in the amount of contracts that are completely falling through. About 15% of contracts nationwide are being canceled before closing, the highest we've seen reported in recent years. Deal cancellations are rising because after the excitement of an offer being accepted wears off, the reality of the financial commitment comes into clear view. Some buyers are simply getting cold feet and backing out when they see the actual payments. Some qualified borrowers were on the edge, but when rates move, ratios can quickly move out of scope. Then, while others are simply losing approval midway through the process. This certainly doesn't help with the illusion that nothing is selling, even though the same homes are circulating in and out of the market. Although the exact percentage isn't known, over at least 50% of homeowners refinanced their mortgage during the years of 2020 and 2021 and locked into a historically low interest rate. As a result, I think there's sort of a lock-in effect in the minds of sellers. Millions of homeowners have mortgage rates between 2 and 3%. If they sell today and buy again, they'd be trading that for a rate that's potentially doubled from their current rate. Let's not kid ourselves. There's a real psychological anchor in the minds of any would-be seller at play here. Even if they could move to a more accommodating home and not have their payment drastically increase, why leave a historically low interest rate behind? So instead of dropping their prices or realigning with current buyer payment demand, they pull the listing, wait for next season, and hope rates improve to help them out. This creates artificially low inventory even when demand isn't strong. Now, for the Midwest market dynamic, here in South Dakota, Iowa, and Nebraska, we've seen inventory increase slightly, The average days on market are trending longer, and bidding wars are far less common. Meanwhile, some sellers are still expecting the 2021 sold in 24 hours experience. But today, 45 to 60 days before the home is under contract or sold is the norm. Like many other areas of the nation, what are many sellers doing instead of adjusting prices? They're just pulling the listing and waiting to re-enter. This is how we get to what I call a virtual tight inventory. I say that because the homes exist. You just won't see them currently listed on the market. Okay, so the resolution, let's start back at the top. Homes aren't vanishing because demand is crazy, right? They're vanishing because sellers are hesitating. And that hesitation is exactly why buyers finally have leverage again. Correct. To all my buyers out there, this shift actually gives you more control than you've had in years. Your leverage is back, especially with the homes sitting at 60 to 120 days. They're are far more likely to have sellers that are more than able and willing to negotiate. There's also less competition, and multiple offers are rare. You can keep inspections and protect yourself again. Now, from a timing strategy standpoint, when a home is pulled and relisted, often at a lower price, that's your window. For example, let's say a Sioux Falls home listed at $350,000 sits for 90 days. It's then delisted, then reappears at a price of $329,000. This is where buyers can negotiate. We're talking things like seller credits, which can be utilized to cover closing costs or put towards lowering the qualifying rate. It can also help in requests for seller paid repairs. I've said it a few times, but quiet markets reward the strategic buyers. Okay, so for sellers, if you're selling, here's the reality. I'm not trying to upset you or impact your pocketbook. I observe the sentiment of these markets. I listen to and discuss with professionals working in all facets of real estate. Then I think my own thoughts and provide my honest, well-intending strategies. Here's what I have for the sellers. Price for today's market, not yesterday's. Buyers are payment driven. It's one thing to have interest in your home. It's another to feel comfortable taking on a monthly payment of the home. So after you've priced accordingly, keep in mind the mind of the buyer when I say that concessions beat price cuts. Constantly declining prices, those create questions. Concessions portray a willingness to meet buyers where they're at currently. Not to mention that seller concessions for closing credits or inspection repairs often cost less than a large price drop. Now, last but not least, avoid the relist trap. Pulling the listing and relaunching at the same price rarely works. People notice things. In places like Des Moines, Omaha, Sioux Falls, and Rapid City, sellers who list based on current demand, not nostalgia, see smoother, faster offers. Okay, if you want to take some things away, I'll go rapid fire here. Homes aren't selling fast because buyers, they're being more selective. Sellers are pulling listings instead of adjusting the price. It's not a crash, it is a reset. Buyers with strategy win. Sellers who adapt early, those are the ones who win. And no matter what side of the transaction you're on, know that a balanced market will always reward preparation.